Hello everyone, this is Laura Susan Johnson with Period Pieces, and today I'm going to be reviewing for my first, Halloween review. I'm going to try to do several movies for Halloween, but anyway, my first one doesn't really seem like a Halloween movie, but it's kind of a scary movie in a way. At least it's an apocalyptic movie. Think Frozen meets The Day After Tomorrow meets Unstoppable meets The Donner Party story meets any anti-fascist narrative you can think of. It's called Snowpiercer. I like to call it the Snowpiercer because that's pretty much, they don't ever say it, they never call it that in the movie. You never hear Snowpiercer, that phrase. You never hear that in the movie. It's based on a 1984 French graphic novel by Jacques Loeb, Benjamin Legrand, and Jean-Marc Rocher. It looks amazing, but I've never read it. And you'd think with the endearing popularity of comics in Hollywood these days, it would have been a shoo-in with distributors, but not so. I don't know if it's because it's a Korean-Czech movie. It's from South Korea and the Czech Republic. Or because it's an unknown director, or what. But, it has Chris Evans. It's Captain America, for goodness sake. It has John Hurt, Tilda Swinton, Jamie Bell, Ed Harris. It has a ton of, well-known actors in it. So, I don't understand, but the Weinstein people are the ones that finally picked it up and distributed it a year after it came out. It's directed by Joon-Ho. If I'm incorrect, I'll just put the correction in the video. Of course, there are spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie, for goodness sake, don't watch this. Go see the movie first. It also has actor Kang Ho-sung, and actress Ah Sung-ko. It also has Luke Pasqualino, Vlad Ivanov, Allison Pill, Paul Lazar, and a whole bunch of other people. And it is like I said, it's an apocalyptic story. It begins in 2014, which, makes it already dated now, because it's 2 years after it. But, the director can always go back and, change that date easily. An inventor named Wilford has invented a fabulous, unstoppable train engine, and he's obviously a very rich man, because somebody who's that rich can only afford to have a train track built. Either that or he got rich off the invention of the engine, I don't know, but somebody builds a great big train track all over the globe. So, somebody builds this train track and this train engine in anticipation of another invention by somebody who is obviously not named. I don't know if Wilford invented it, and this is a scenario that I made up. What if he invented this other invention, which is a chemical, and maybe hoped to have this scenario play out so that he could have all these people aboard his engine, so he could have a sense, aboard his train, so he could have a sense of power over these people. The chemical is launched into the atmosphere in an attempt to cool off the planet. It's a global warming thing. So there's your Day After Tomorrow scenario, minus all the preaching and all of the political stuff. CW14, I believe it's called, or CW4. I know it's something like that, and I'll put the real one I'll put the correct one in the video. But anyway, it's launched into the atmosphere in an attempt to give us a fresh start, to cool off the planet. Of course, it does too much of a good thing, and it makes the planet so cold that it's unsurvivable. In other words, it's so sub-zero that it's like, it's worse than Antarctica. It's not 80 degrees below zero. It's probably 180 below zero. I don't know. It's just so cold that we cannot live there. Here. Whatever. So, anyway, a bunch of rich people, obviously, pay Wilfred big sums of money to board the train and get deluxe accommodations, luxury. They're able to keep furs. They're able to keep jewelry. They're able to keep good food in their bellies. They're able to keep, good dental and medical care. They're able to keep beautiful clothes and, just material stuff. And some other people who I will talk about later are able to get aboard the train, and I don't know. They just live aboard the train, and they're basically a waste of space. And then way down at the tail end of the train, you have your slum people. Apparently these people could not afford to pay Wilfred millions or thousands or whatever. They had to beg. They begged him, please let us aboard, please. And he made a deal with them. And I have a feeling I know what that deal was. You keep breeding and I'll let you aboard. But you give me everything you got. Give me everything. I take everything and I give it to people I like who are in the front of the train. And you keep whatever you have on your back. And you get nothing. And I think he told them, he'll feed them. But he didn't tell them when. And here's where the Donner Party thing comes in. He starved these people for at least a month and a half, 2 months. And they had to resort to cannibalism. Now remember, I warned you, spoilers. If this isn't your thing, don't watch the movie, but there's no graphic cannibalism. This is all exposition later in the movie. You don't know how horribly these people suffer until towards the end of the movie. Chris Evans is part of this miserable group. And so is John Hurt and Jamie Bell and Octavia Spencer and Ewan Bremner and Luke Pasqualino. They're all part of this miserable group of poor people stuck in the back of the train. At one point, they must have been middle class, maybe even upper class people. But since they didn't have what it took to get aboard the train and avoid freezing to death, Wilfred made a deal with these people and said, if you want to be on my train, if you want to live, you do this. And he let them aboard the train in the very back where it was crowded, and they didn't get food, they didn't get water, they didn't get anything for at least a month and a half. And he knew what he was doing when he did this to them. So after they resorted to cannibalism and destroyed at least half of their souls, and he imprinted upon them extreme hatred for him, he finally started feeding them these weird gelatin bars, these blackish green, disgusting gelatin bars, and that's all they've had ever since, 3 times a day, monotonous gelatin bars. God knows what they taste like, I don't even want to know. And then there came a day when these gelatin bars began having little strange messages wrapped in gel caps, buried in one of them now and then. It's then that John Hurt starts saying to Chris Evans, I think it's time we started rebelling. this has gone on too long. There needs to be changes made. And he encourages Chris Evans and Jamie Bell to lead a revolt. It isn't the first time a revolt has been led, but every revolt has resulted in failure. And no one's ever been able to overthrow this megalomaniac at the front of the train, Mr. Wilford. Snowpiercer is one of those movies that's kind of like Inception. There's a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of stuff where you have to just chuck your sense of disbelief and just roll with it and have fun. I want to ask, where do these people shit? Where do these people have sex? Because they're having kids. They're having kids left and right. And I think the having kids stuff is part of the deal. I think that's part of the agreement that Wilford made with the poor people. You have kids and I'll let you on the train. Keep me in a steady supply of kids. And I think there's a double meaning to that, and I'll get into that in a little bit. According to dear old Mr. Wilford, whatever his name is, Wilford, all old world people were friggin' idiots, or friggin' morons. That's the quote. And the people aboard the train, especially the people, no, certainly not the people in the tail section, the ones that are shit on all the time, but the people in the front of the train see Wilford as a deity. Not just a leader, not just a lifesaver, not just a great inventor, but a deity. He is divine, according to Mason, who was played with wicked glee by Tilda Swinton. I mean, Tilda Swinton is wickedly good. She is decked out in furs. She wears false teeth that make her sinister looking. And she just plays it to the hilt. She is one of the most vicious villains I've seen in recent history. I'll tell you that. And it's a very satisfactory. I mean, she's a villain you just love to hate. She's a villain worthy of Disney villains. That's how good she is. She revels in pain and misery. And when they punish Ewan Bremner for being angry because they're stealing his child from him, and they do that regularly, they steal the children from these people. That's part of the agreement, obviously, that Wilford made when they said, you can get aboard my train, but you have to have continuously have children, and you have to breed. I'm going to leave you in squalor and filth. I don't know how these people bathe. I don't know how they go to the bathroom. I don't know how they cleaned up the blood, how they remain semi-clean looking. I mean, they look filthy and unbathed, but in a way you can still see their faces. Where's the lice crawling all over them? Those are questions that I'm like, what? How can they not have lice crawling on them? How are their heads not kept shaved? John Hurt is a double amputee. And that's part of the cannibalism thing. When people were killing and eating other people, John Hurt was the first one to say, do not kill that person. I'll chop off my arm and give it to you guys if that'll satisfy your hunger. But they weren't killing because they were murderous and full of bloodlust. They were killing because they were starving. And when you're starving, when you're that hungry, when you're that desperate for food, I can't imagine it. I just can't imagine it. So, yeah, it's definitely a grim movie. It's like I said, it's like Inception very much. It's both implausible yet fun enough to suspend your disbelief. Full of questions that never get answered, yet clever enough for you to happily shout, "Fuck it! This is 1,000 times better than all of the dreck that Michael Bay has produced for his entire career." They go through, as they begin their coup, as it were, they grew, it is not all set in either a beautiful, stark white atmosphere, and it's not all set in a grim, black, filthy atmosphere either. It's very colorful. The movie's very colorful, surprisingly. It's got a whole lot of different settings. The cars are all very diverse as they travel through the cars, fighting off their enemies, which include a bunch of axe-wielding masked men. I mean, I want to think of them as ninjas in a way, but they're just a bunch of axe men, I think. They have masks over their eyes, and they do this ritualistic thing with a fish where they just coat their axes in fish blood, and it's really gruesome, but it's like they're going to war, and they have this like miniature war aboard one of the cars. And then they have this thing where it's New Year's, they're going over this bridge, this landmark bridge, and they stop the axe fight just to do this Happy New Year thing, and then they resume their axe fight, and unfortunately Jamie Bell's character is killed off during this axe fight, and then Luke Pasqualino's character takes his place by Chris Evans' side, and I don't understand why. There's this one little gripe I have about Luke Pasqualino's character. He's not very well developed. He's just suddenly he's the one that has to take Jamie Bell's place, and I'm not sure why he was so important. He's not narrated very well, so I don't understand his significance. And shortly after, he's killed off too, so I'm not really sure why. That was the one disappointment I had with the movie. It's just this character, his name is Ray, which is a bland name, and his character is very poorly developed. There's nothing really developed about him. So that was kind of sad, but it wasn't so horrible that I'd, get angry at the movie or anything. I just thought he should have been more developed, so that you could figure out why he was the one to replace Jamie Bell once Jamie Bell was killed off. They go to the water supply car. They go to the car where their protein bars are made, and that's where Paul Lazar, he was one of the bug geeks from Silence of the Lambs, and he was taken from them so that they could force him to make the protein bars. And then they go to a car full of school children who are taught nothing but the Wilford Warship regime. And the teacher is played by Alison Pill. She's pretty much a very surprising performance. It's kind of like let's just say that there's this running rumor that bullets are extinct, and they get a horrible surprise. And they go through, the dental care car and the beauty salon car, and that's where you see all these fancy-ass people. You see this car full of growing vegetables and plants and fruits and things. And you see this wonderful aquarium car full of ocean life, and you see the guy making sushi, and they only have sushi twice a year, which is kind of strange. I don't understand why these expensive, fancy-ass people have sushi twice a year on New Year's and some other holiday. I'm not sure which one. All these, the spa car was colorful. The swimming pools, that was one moment that made me laugh, because this train, it's on a train. Do these people ever get jostled or bumped around? Do they ever get nauseated at all? There was the farm car so that good old Mr. Wilford can have his fucking steak. And then here we do come to the one car that I'm like, what the fuck? What function do these losers serve to society and to Mr. Wilford? All they do is serve to give Nom, the security specialist who opens all the little gates, plenty of chronal. Chronal is the drug of choice aboard this train. Chronal is something that people inhale and get high on. It's some kind of industrial waste thing, and they give it to people aboard the train, and they get high on it. And that is the new, shall we say, ecstasy. So, what do you know? We have a rave car full of ravers who drink alcohol. I guess they had plenty of alcohol aboard this train to last 14, 15 years, 16, 17 years, whatever. And these people are drinking. I don't know, it's just, that's the one car that really made me pissed off, because it's like, what do these people do to serve Mr. Wilford? They don't do anything except party and get wasted. Why isn't he killing them off? Why doesn't he banish them to the back of the train? They don't do anything. What do they do? So, I didn't understand that a bit. I mean, with him, such a dictator, and believing in such a society of usefulness versus uselessness, those were the most useless people aboard the train. They don't make the chronal, they just want the chronal. And I wanted to know why Nam and his daughter Yona were in prison. You know, what did they do? Were they ravers and they did something he didn't like, Mr. Wilford didn't like, and they ended up in prison? I didn't understand anything about the rave car. But it's not enough to make me hate the film. It really isn't. So it's just one of those things that made me scratch my head and ask why. So anyway, spoilers. They do make it all the way to the front of the train after a lot of hardship. They finally make it past all the fancy-ass cars. Nobody fights them. But they do have fights with the Axemen and with this motherfucker. This one, I mean, it was like, this one I wanted dead more than I wanted Mason dead. Mason, of course, was Tilda Swinton. And, you know, when she was killed off, it was like, yes. But then you had Franco the Elder, played by Vlad Ivanov? Yeah, Vlad Ivanov. This son of a bitch, it's like, you son of a bitch, die already. But every time you thought he was dead, the son of a bitch rose again. And he was relentless. He was just like this super villain. He would just not go down without all kinds of, you know, I mean, he had knives stuck in him. He'd been shot I don't know how many times. He was a villain that once he finally got taken out by Nam, it was a delight. It was definitely a delight. So, they make it to the front of the train. Chris Evans tells Nom a bunch of very, very sad and grim and disturbing stuff about life in the back of the train when they first boarded the train. And then they go into Wilford's department. One question I had about Wilford that wasn't answered, is that son of a bitch a pedophile? Because he keeps little children in little cupboards. When Chris Evans tried to stop the engine and Yona tried to retrieve Timmy out of the little compartment below the floor, Wilford let out the other kidnapped child, Andy, who was Andy Sr.'s kid. He keeps these kids in little cupboards in his little department there. What does he do? Does he molest them in his spare time? So that really got me thinking there. That was a little creepy. After the final battle, so to speak, I have to say that I do not believe that Yona and Timmy were the only ones to survive the disaster at the end. I think that others did, if they did, because the train had a lot of padding and there were so many cars. I mean, once they had that shooting scene between Franco the Elder and Chris Evans, you saw so many cars. There were just so many cars. And I know it was a horrific crash, but if those two survived, I'm really sure that others survived, and they were just either not shown crawling out or they were just slower to get out. And the ending is so open to your interpretation. Not only do I believe others could have survived, but where do these two young people shelter? The only place they could shelter is in the train. I didn't see any other hospitable terrain around there. And again, how do we know that they didn't freeze to death in the following nights? And how do we know the polar bear didn't get them? So it is a very fun movie. It's more colorful than it appears on the posters and in the trailers. There's so much fun content in it. It is grim. It has a sense of gallows humor. I have to say that it is just such a good film compared to a lot of the stuff that's been coming out. Anyway, I would give Snowpiercer at least a 9.5 or a 10 out of 10. It's a really great movie. I highly recommend it.